Hi there, it's Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures. Today we're going to talk about the domain name system and how it can be secured. Now, the domain name system is basically used by everybody. Hackers, legitimate users. It is the thing that converts a domain name, www.gula.tech, to an IP address, a 1.2.3.4. It's used in email, used in web browsing, used in many, many things. It's part of secure web browsing. And if someone's going to ask you, is our domain name system secure? It's a really hard question to do. So we're going to talk about all these different use cases and what that could mean. And we're going to do it from the context of Star Wars. Imagine you're Darth Vader. You're not only a Sith Lord, but you're also a Lord of DNS and domain names and whatnot. And one of your flackies, one of your admins says, our DNS is the most secure in the galaxy. Well, what does Darth Vader say? Well, he might ask, is it fully patched? Now, believe it or not, even though a lot of people use DNS in the cloud where you're registering it like a GoDaddy or different types of web hosting, Google and whatnot, there's a lot of reason for running a DNS server on the inside of your data center, the inside of your networks. It could be open source, could be commercial, could be part of your load balance. All of those things have vulnerabilities and they can be attacked. Now, of course, even if it's secure, all the administrators who are running these DNS servers for you, even the DNS servers in the cloud, like your Google and stuff, if they get compromised, if they get phished, if they have an attack that makes their accounts compromised, perhaps somebody can log in and impersonate those administrators, and somebody can have a bad day with your DNS information. Big part of DNS that I've seen people forget a lot is they forget to renew. When you have a DNS domain name, you can actually look up, you can see when it expires, and you can be there and you can almost automate these things, and you can buy a DNS domain name right when it expires. Well, why might you want to do that? Well, one, maybe you're just being opportunistic and you want to make some money. Maybe you put some pornography, some anti-government, something embarrassing to the owner, and say, hey, I'll sell it to you for some Bitcoin. It's sort of like ransomware. This has been going on for years. Maybe somebody just wants to use this to distribute malware. I recently became aware of a doctor who joined a new practice, let the domain for his old practice die, and hackers bought it and started distributing malware. So nobody hacked that, nobody did anything wrong, but that wasn't very secure at that point. Now, a lot of people think that if you have a DNS server that only your employees can use it, but there's really no fancy setting that says this is an employee legitimate software and this is malware and I can't use it. So malware is designed to basically use DNS to connect to the internet, exfiltrate information, exfiltrate commands, and even some cases, data that's out there. And you would think, well, how could I stop that? Well, there's a lot of DNS services out there that track all of the command and control that's being used collected by the threat intelligence companies and open source projects out there, and they will actually just sinkhole those queries. For example, let's say there's a domain out there and it's www.1191 Ajax 911. I just made that up, right? But maybe that becomes an indicator for malware on your network. Well, if a DNS system saw that query for that, it could just basically return unknown or basically not let anybody go to it. And this is a really good protection for your employees because they might have legitimate malware on the laptop that's waiting to receive commands and they can't. So we want to prevent malware from using DNS if it's known malware. Now this other thing you have to worry about is the DNS system itself, are you forcing your employees to use the DNS system that you set up? Now this could mean a couple different things. Maybe if you let your employees do their own configurations on their endpoints, their laptops, maybe they're just kind of using Comcast, Fios, whatever their ISP is, and their security controls might be different than yours. If you'd like to force your employees to go through your DNS servers, you have to lock down your firewall rules, your outbound rules, and this actually becomes a really interesting way to detect malware that sort of brings its own domain name server IP addresses. If you're forcing all the computers in your organization to only use a certain set of DNS servers, if queries come out for another IP address doing a DNS query, that might be something that you're worth investigating. Now, once you have all these DNS servers, maybe it's in the cloud, how do you gather all this stuff? Now, again, some of those commercial services that I was talking about, you can literally go in there and get the audit trail of who did a query for what and when, and usually these services have some classifications like, was it pornography, was it gambling, was it malware? Was it an evasive site such as proxy evasion tools, which allow you to surf the internet kind of anonymously? But maybe you can also collect this from the endpoints. If you have an EDR solution, you can capture network traffic and DNS queries at the endpoint. Free tools like Sysmon are a great example for doing that. And you can also do passive DNS collection with sniffers. Now, some traffic itself is being tunneled over HTTPS. That's the actual, port 443. In order to collect that, you have to do break and inspect. But collecting this information is gold because it really allows you to figure out who was talking to who wanted to go where, and at what point. But of course, collecting it all is not the same thing as analyzing it all. So if you're collecting all this information, maybe you have to analyze it with a SIM, with a SOAR tool, by enriching it with threat intelligence to actually understand all of that what's going on. And then finally, what about denial of service? Is your DNS resilient to an attack from somebody else who wants to knock you offline? And you might be surprised how easy it is to target and overwhelm a DNS server. These kind of things happen a lot. A lot of the bigger ISPs are immune to this because they deal with it every day. But you have to answer those kinds of questions. So of course, if you can't answer any of these things, Darth Vader is going to find your lack of DNS knowledge disturbing. Now, I ripped through this really, really quickly, but the point is, I rapidly went from one different attack vector to another. Now, if you're watching this and you're in a small business and you're like, man, I'm not too sure, you have to understand a couple things. First, browsing the internet and how you browse with DNS is different than the DNS for maybe your office store or your website. They're two different things. And it's really easy to basically take the DNS that you're browsing with and protect it. An easy button is to simply use the Google Quad 8 or Global Cyber Alliance Quad 9. The commercial opportunities, they're not that expensive, and they actually give you the actual IP addresses and endpoints that are doing that. Now, of course, for your business, for your domain name, you want to make sure that whoever set that up, that you have a way to get into that, right? So, and it's got to be secure. It's got to be two-factor. It's got to be a strong password. You might even want to lock that down to a certain IP address that you're coming from, because anybody who gets a hold of that can take your business offline. If you've outsourced this sort of thing, this is the type of thing you really want somebody to show you how to do, just so you're aware of that. Now, if you enjoyed this video, if you want to learn more, I encourage you to come over to Gula.tech. We do investing in cybersecurity. We do a lot of philanthropy for cybersecurity nonprofits. We've got our whole list of portfolio, grant awards, and a whole bunch of videos and blogs like this. Stay safe online. Thank you for watching.